Welcome to Occult Archives, where we uncover the mysteries, myths, and legends behind history's most feared books.
From mystical grimoires to ancient religious texts.
These books carry secrets too dangerous to be read.
Are you ready to turn the pages of the unknown?
This is Season 1, Episode 5.
The Book of Thoth, Aleister Crowley's Tarot of the Occult.
Let's dive in.
Today,
We're taking a deep dive into
a truly distinctive tarot system.
Aleister Crowley's Book of Thoth and its accompanying deck.
You know, this isn't just your run-of-the-mill tarot.
Yeah.
It's a profoundly symbolic creation.
Absolutely.
That weaves together an incredibly diverse tapestry of esoteric and philosophical ideas.
Yeah, and for this exploration, our primary source is naturally Crowley's own Book of Thoth.
Of course.
Our aim isn't simply to recite card meanings.
Right.
What we really want to do is kind of unpack
The fundamental concepts,
Yeah.
the core significance embedded within this tarot, to really grasp the philosophical and magical structure that Crowley meticulously constructed.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
Where did this Book of Thoth and the deck even originate? It
Well,
wasn't a sudden flash of inspiration, was it?
not at all.
Okay.
Interestingly, Crowley himself seems to have been quite hesitant to embark on this project.
Bruh.
He famously quipped that he was the laziest man in 3 continents.
Wow.
However, it was the persistent influence of soror IWE, better known as Frida Harris,
Okay.
that truly set things in motion.
How interesting.
She essentially spurred him on
True.
to create what, in many respects, became a completely original work.
You know what's fascinating here is the sheer scope of their ambition.
Yes.
This wasn't just about putting a new spin on existing tarot symbolism.
Right.
Crowley's intention was to integrate modern science, mathematics, philosophy, and even anthropology, all while remaining firmly rooted in the Kabbalistic tradition.
Yes.
That's a pretty audacious undertaking.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And Frida Harris's contribution cannot be overstated.
Right.
She wasn't merely illustrating someone else's vision. She was a genuine collaborator,
Right.
working from Crowley's often cursory sketches,
Right.
or even just verbal descriptions.
Wow.
She dedicated 5 years to this endeavor,
Oh, wow.
sometimes repainting the same card up to 8 times
Oh, my goodness.
to meet Crowley's famously exacting standards.
Yeah, that level of commitment is truly remarkable. And what was the ultimate goal of this intense effort?
Wow.
It wasn't just to produce a beautiful set of cards, was it?
No. Crowley envisioned it as a chart for the bold seamen of the new aeon,
Okay.
a kind of spiritual compass to navigate what he called the Great Sea of Understanding, and ultimately reach the city of the pyramids.
Okay.
Think of it as a tool for profound spiritual and magical exploration.
Okay.
He even penned an accompanying booklet,
Oh, really?
although he rather dismissively suggested it could be omitted without much loss.
Which perhaps hints at where he believed the true essence of the work resided within the imagery of the deck itself and the underlying system of correspondences.
Right.
So let's delve into those foundational influences.
Okay.
You mentioned the Kabbalistic tradition.
Yes.
How does that serve as a base for Crowley's tarot?
Well, a cornerstone is the Kabbalistic tree of life,
Okay.
as Eliphas Levi,
Right.
a highly influential 19th century occultist, understood it.
Okay.
The tarot is essentially a pictorial representation of this tree of life. Levi even structured his own magical writings around the 22 major arcana, viewing them as fundamental keys to understanding the entirety of the Qabalah.
So for Levi, the tarot wasn't just a tool for predicting the future.
Right.
It was a blueprint of the cosmos and the human psyche all encoded within symbolic form.
Exactly.
And Crowley expanded upon this concept, but with his own distinct approach,
Yes.
particularly concerning the secret chiefs of the order, right?
Exactly. Both Mathers,
Oh, yeah.
an earlier figure in occultism,
Right.
and Crowley claimed to have contact with these enigmatic secret chiefs. However, a key difference lies in the nature of the evidence. Mathers' claims didn't demonstrably lead to significant new insights within their order
Right.
that couldn't be attributed to existing knowledge.
Okay.
Crowley, on the other hand, argued for what he called internal evidence within his writings,
Okay.
suggesting that the knowledge he presented went beyond what was publicly available at the time.
And this purported new knowledge often delves into some quite abstract Kabbalistic concepts, doesn't it?
It does.
Ideas like nothingness and limitless light.
Yes, the Kabbalists spoke of Ain,
Okay.
which isn't just simple non-existence,
Okay.
but rather an unmanifest potentiality, a kind of primordial void pregnant with possibility. Then they conceived of Ein Sof.
Okay.
Limitlessness, almost like the infinite expanse of space itself.
I see.
And to even begin to grasp this, they further postulated Ein Sof, limitless light,
Okay.
which has been compared to the old scientific concept of the luminiferous ether, or even the more modern idea of the space-time continuum.
So from this formless void, this nothingness composed of the annihilation of two imaginary opposites,
Right.
emerges the point, symbolizing unity.
Yeah. Yes.
And from there, Crowley, following the Kabbalistic progression, outlined the unfolding of our reality.
Precisely to have a point.
Right.
You inherently need another to relate it to.
Right.
Hence the number 2.
Do.
And the concept of the line.
Okay.
Then a third point gives you a surface and the triangle,
Okay.
introducing the idea of planar geometry.
I see.
But these are still abstract.
They're
To
deep.
arrive at something we can recognize as matter,
Right.
you need 3 coordinates to define a point in 3-dimensional space.
Okay.
And then comes a crucial step. The postulation of motion. The number 5, which is linked to the Hebrew letter He's mine, and the concept of the Great Mother,
Right.
the very womb of active existence.
And this introduction of motion also inevitably brings in the concept of time,
Right.
because events can only occur through movement and in a sequence. And from there, we arrive at 6, which Crowley connects to self-consciousness,
Right.
a point capable of experiencing a past, present, and future. Okay. And then he shifts focus to the 4 classical elements: fire, water, air, and earth.
Okay.
Now, it's vital to understand that these aren't intended in the modern scientific sense.
Oh, right.
Alchemically and Kabbalistically, fire is associated with the principle of the father.
Okay.
Water with the mother air being the product of their union with the son, and earth with the daughter.
And this elemental framework extends to the court cards within Crowley's tarot as well,
Yes.
but with a rather unique twist compared to traditional decks.
Yes, instead of the familiar king, queen, knight, and page,
Right.
we find knight, queen, prince, and princess.
Interesting.
These figures represent the father, mother, son, and daughter archetypes within each suit.
Okay.
And each suit corresponds to one of the 4 elements: wands for fire, cups for water, swords for air, and discs for earth.
Okay.
The knight embodies the fiery aspect of that element.
The queen, the watery, the prince, the airy, and the princess, the earthy manifestation.
And these 4 elements and their subsequent subdivision
Yes.
also relate to the Kabbalistic Tree of Life's division into 4 distinct planes or worlds, don't they?
Exactly. The Tree of Life is seen as comprising 4 planes. Atziluth,
Right.
the archetypal world, which is associated with fire.
Okay.
Braya, the creative world, linked to water. Yetzirah, the formative world, connected to air.
Okay.
And Asai, the material world, corresponding to earth.
I see.
Interestingly, these planes also align with different aspects of the human soul. Jakeda, Chianeshama Ruach, and the Serish.
It's a remarkably intricate web of interconnected correspondences.
Yes.
It's certainly a complex system, but it really underscores the point that for Crowley and for the Kabbalistic tradition he drew upon,
Right.
the tarot is far more than just a deck of cards. It functions as a comprehensive map of reality on multiple overlapping levels.
Yes.
Now let's move on to the 22 trumps,
Okay.
a major arcana. Crowley emphasizes that these aren't just simple, straightforward symbols.
Absolutely. He famously calls them hieroglyphs of peculiar mysteries.
Okay.
They're not simply direct representations of planets, elements, and zodiacal signs,
Right.
even though those associations do indeed exist within the system.
Okay.
He even goes so far as to suggest that the tarot might be a form of propaganda, disseminated by the secret chiefs,
Interesting.
resenting specific facets of the universe,
Okay.
and certain doctrines that were particularly relevant to the existing political situations of their respective eras.
That's a really intriguing idea.
Yeah.
The tarot functioning almost as a form of encoded communication across different ages. And the titles of these 22 trumps in Crowley's deck are quite striking.
Yeah.
There's some notable differences from more traditional tarot decks.
We encounter cards such as the Fool,
Okay.
the Magus or Juggler,
Okay.
the High Priestess,
Right.
the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant, the Lovers, sometimes called Brothers,
Interesting.
the Chariot Adjustment,
Right.
in place of Justice,
Okay.
the Hermit, Fortune, Wheel of Fortune, Lust, the Hanged Man,
Right.
Death,
Right.
Alchemy,
Okay.
the Devil,
Okay.
the Tower, War,
Mhm.
the Star, the Moon, the Sun,
Okay.
the eon, and the universe.
Okay.
And each of these is associated with complex attributions to Hebrew letters, planets, and zodiac signs, sometimes with overlapping correspondences, such as the letter Shin, representing both fire and spirit, and the letter Tau, representing both Saturn and Earth.
Let's delve into a few of these key trumps.
Okay.
To give you a real sense of the depth and richness of Crowley's symbolism. Perhaps we can begin with the Fool.
All right.
Which is designated as Atu0.
Yes.
Or sometimes placed as an appendix.
The Fool is a particularly fascinating card.
Okay.
Because it's associated with seemingly contradictory concepts, silence, wisdom, and even folly. Crowley refers to it as the highest oracle.
Okay.
There's the ancient legend of the wandering prince or fool who ultimately wins the king's daughter.
Okay.
A motif explored by Fraser in The Golden Bough.
Right.
Highlighting the enduring nature of this archetype. Crowley points out that foolishness has a traditional connection to holiness.
Interesting.
With the very word silly etymologically linked to selig.
Okay.
Meaning holy or blessed.
I see.
It embodies a kind of primordial innocence.
Okay.
A state of being unburdened by societal constraints.
Interesting.
Think of it sometimes, to truly understand something new, we have to shed our preconceived notions and embrace the unknown.
Right.
Much like a fool might wander into uncharted territory.
Exactly. And Crowley also draws in the archetype of Parsifal.
Yes.
The pure fool in Western mythology. And even connects the fool to Harpocrates.
Right.
The Egyptian god of silence.
Yes.
And the wild, untamed energy of Pan. It's this idea that apparent contradictions can find unity on a higher plane.
Yes.
Beyond the limitations of our everyday logic. Okay. Then we have the Magus.
Okay.
Atu-I, which is linked to Mercury and the concept of illusion. Crowley highlights its connections to fortune, represented by the acronym ROTA.
Okay.
Lust, associated with the goddess Babylon.
Okay.
Art, symbolized by the arrow.
Right.
And the universe, the figure of Thoth.
Okay.
The Egyptian counterpart of Mercury is central here.
Right.
Often depicted with the ibis head, symbolizing focused concentration.
Right.
The phoenix wand, representing resurrection and transformation.
Okay.
And the Ankh, signifying progress through the various planes of existence, and also embodying another form of the Rosicrucian Rose and Cross.
Moving on. The High Priestess,
Yes.
Atu II, is attributed to the moon and the Hebrew letter Gimel,
Yes.
which means camel.
Right.
She embodies the spiritual essence of Isis or Artemis.
Veiled by a luminous, almost blinding light. Crowley emphasizes that this light, while radiant, isn't the ultimate manifestation of the eternal spirit, but rather a veil that conceals it.
Right.
Paradoxically, all the more effectively, because of its very brilliance.
Right.
It's like trying to stare directly at the sun.
Yeah.
You see the light, but not what lies beyond.
Exactly.
And then there's Lust,
Okay.
a really powerful card associated with the zodiac sign Leo, and the Hebrew letter Teth, meaning serpent.
Yes.
This card vividly depicts the woman often identified as Babylon, or the Scarlet Woman, riding the beast. It's a potent visual representation of Crowley's core principle. Love is the law, love under will, and is strongly connected to the dawning of the Aeon of Horus, the current spiritual era according to Thelema, death.
Okay.
Atu the 13th, attributed to Scorpio and the Hebrew letter Nun, which means fish. Isn't about literal physical death in a simplistic sense, but rather about profound transformation, a necessary and often dramatic shedding of the old to make way for the new. Much like a snake shedding its skin, it's the eternal dance between life and death.
Yes.
The cyclical rhythm of existence, art or alchemy.
Yes.
Atu 4/6 linked to Sagittarius, and the Hebrew letter Samek, meaning arrow, represents the crucial process of the mingling and integration of seemingly opposing forces, like fire and water in alchemical traditions. It's about the great work of consciously harmonizing our fundamental elemental desires and achieving inner balance.
Okay.
The devil,
Yes.
Atu XV, tied to Capricorn, and the Hebrew letter Ayin, meaning eye, is an interesting departure from traditional depictions. It's not the conventional Christian figure of evil, but is more aligned with figures like Pan-Bacchus Diffuse or Baphomet, embodying primal energy and liberation from self-imposed restrictions. Crowley emphasizes the idea of a kind of innocent state beyond conventional moralistic constraints.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the Tower,
Okay.
scale 6, attributed to Mars, and the Hebrew letter Pe, meaning mouth.
Right.
This card signifies sudden and often catastrophic upheaval, the dramatic shattering of old rigid structures that have become unsustainable.
Right.
It's a disruptive force, but one that is frequently necessary for genuine progress to occur.
The star,
Okay.
Atu Selseth, associated with Aquarius, and the Hebrew letter Tzadi,
Okay.
which is also interestingly linked to the emperor suggesting a potential Deeple connection,
Right.
represents Nuit, the star goddess, in Crowley's cosmology,
Okay.
and embodies hope, inspiration, and the boundless possibilities of the universe.
The moon, Atu Asophis,
Yeah.
linked to Pisces, and the Hebrew letter Kof,
Yes.
meaning the back of the head,
Right.
symbolizes the realm of midnight illusion,
Mm-hmm.
the liminal space between conscious and unconscious,
Right.
the threshold between life and death,
Right.
and is associated with Anubis,
Mm-hmm.
the ancient Egyptian guardian of that threshold.
Right.
It represents the hidden aspects of ourselves
Right.
and the often unseen forces at play.
The sun,
Okay.
Atu 9x, attributed to the sun itself, and the Hebrew letter Resh, meaning head, signifies the dawn of the new eon,
Right.
often depicted with twin children,
Right.
and represents a transformed understanding of the Rosicrucian formula of the rose and cross,
Okay.
a symbol of spiritual integration and rebirth.
Okay.
The aeon,
Okay.
Atu XX, connected to fire, and the Hebrew letter Shin, meaning tooth,
Okay.
represents the full dawning of the Aeon of Horus, with Heru, who is identical to the angel depicted on the tarot card,
Okay.
taking a central role in this new spiritual era.
Okay. And finally, the universe.
Yes.
Atu-XXXI, attributed to Earth, and the Hebrew letter Tau, meaning cross,
Right.
represents the final synthesis, the ultimate manifestation completion, and harmonious integration of all the preceding stages of the journey.
It's truly a profound journey through these major arcana.
It really is.
And each one, as you said, is incredibly dense with layers upon layers of meaning and interconnected symbolism.
Now let's return to the court cards for a moment.
Okay.
You mentioned that they represent sub-elements.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
Certainly the 16 court cards,
Okay.
the knight, queen, prince, and princess of each of the 4 suits
Right.
represent further subdivisions within the primary elements.
Okay.
So, for example, the Knight of Wands isn't just fire.
Okay.
It embodies the fiery aspect within fire itself.
I see.
Similarly, the Queen of Wands represents the watery aspect of fire,
Okay.
and so on.
Okay.
The prince embodies the airy component,
Right.
and the princess, the earthy component within their respective elemental suits.
Okay.
It's like looking at the different states of matter within each element.
And these attributions also have astrological correspondences,
They do.
providing another layer of understanding, don't they?
They do indeed. For instance, the Knight of Wands. Right.
Being the fiery aspect of fire
Mm-hmm.
is attributed to the sign of Aries,
Okay.
representing that initial forceful burst of energetic initiation.
I see.
The Queen of Wands, the watery aspect of fire,
Right.
falls within the transitional period between Pisces and Aries,
Okay.
suggesting a more receptive yet still intensely energetic quality.
Mm-hmm.
And the Princess of Discs, the earthy aspect of Earth,
Okay.
embodies the grounded stability and potential of that element.
Mm-hmm.
Crowley emphasizes that these cards manifest in incredibly diverse ways,
Right.
from dramatic natural phenomena like lightning and rainbows
Okay.
to the subtle nuances of human character and behavior.
And what about the small cards?
Oh,
The
sure.
numbered cards ranging from the ace to the 10 within each of the 4 suits.
Right.
How do they fit into this intricate framework?
The numbered cards represent the influence of the 10 Sephiroth,
Okay.
of the Kabbalistic tree of life, as they manifest within each specific suit or element.
The aces, as you might expect,
Okay.
signify the fundamental root essence of each element in its purest form.
Okay.
The 2s embody the principle of chakma.
Mm-hmm.
The 3s represent Baina,
Right.
and so on, progressing through the Sephiroth
Okay.
down to the 10s, which represent Malkuth,
Okay.
the realm of material manifestation.
So to give some concrete examples, the Ace of Wands embodies the root of fire or will.
Mm-hmm.
The Ace of Cups represents the root of water or love.
Yes.
The Ace of Swords signifies the root of air or intellect.
Right.
And the Ace of Discs embodies the root of earth or matter.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the aces as the pure, unadulterated potential of each element.
Right.
And as you move through the numerical sequence,
Mm-hmm.
the specific meaning of the Sephira interacts with the inherent nature of the suit.
Yes.
For instance, the number 5 corresponds to Qabalah,
Hmm.
which is associated with the concepts of strife or severity,
Right.
that kind of dynamic tension. So the Five of Wands represents strife within the realm of fire.
Mm-hmm.
The Five of Cups embodies disappointment within water.
Right.
The Five of Swords signifies defeat within air.
Okay.
And the Five of Discs manifests as worry within the realm of earth.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how the energetic quality of the number influences the expression of the element.
Yes.
And Crowley astutely points out that there's often a discernible progression,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes even a sense of degradation or imbalance
Yeah.
as you move from the pure potential of the ace
Mm.
down to the more materialized form of the 10.
Right.
He specifically mentions the Seven of Cups as representing debauch,
Mm-hmm.
a kind of overindulgence and weakening of the watery element.
Right.
He also notes what he calls the lust of result,
Mm-hmm.
inherent in these elemental forces,
Mm-hmm.
their tendency to become fixated on outcomes and potentially become unbalanced or even self-destructive in that pursuit.
Okay.
Now, Crowley's tarot wasn't solely intended for philosophical contemplation
Right.
or gaining psychological insight.
Mm-hmm.
It's deeply interwoven with his personal system of magic.
Yes.
How does the tarot directly relate to his famous definition of magic?
Crowley famously defined magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will.
Okay.
He viewed it as both a body of theoretical understanding
Right?
and a practical set of techniques for bringing about desired outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
He draws a contrast between the tarot's foundation in an ancient system of correspondences
Okay.
and modern science's almost exclusive focus on empirical measurement.
Right.
The tarot, he argues, inherently acknowledges the existence of the incommensurable and the imponderable, those aspects of reality that resist easy quantification and yet exert a powerful influence.
I see.
He even touches upon the ancient concept of animism
Okay.
in relation to the tarot's rich symbolism,
Mm-hmm.
suggesting that these hieroglyphs,
Right.
whether written in ancient texts or depicted in these cards,
Right.
were once perceived as possessing a kind of inherent life force and power.
Wow.
He also alludes to the ancient custom of the king's daughter and the wandering prince
Right.
as a possible historical root for some of the legends and archetypes embedded within tarot traditions,
Okay.
connecting these powerful symbols to very old and resonant cultural narratives.
Mm-hmm.
It really adds another layer of depth to how we might understand these images.
It certainly does.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you consider the enduring power of these symbols across millennia.
Yes.
Finally, while Crowley's Book of Thoth delves into these profound philosophical and magical concepts,
Right.
the tarot, of course, is widely used for the practice of divination.
Mm-hmm.
How does Crowley address this particular aspect?
He does acknowledge the divinatory applications of the tarot,
Oh,
briefly mentioning various operations or different layouts for readings,
okay.
such as simply pairing cards to explore relationships,
Mhm.
using the framework of the 12 astrological houses, or employing the more complex structure of the Tree of Life spread.
I see.
However, he strongly implies that truly effective divination necessitates a deep and comprehensive understanding of the tarot's intricate symbolic language
Right.
and the complex web of correspondences that underpin the entire system.
Right.
It's not merely about rote memorization of simplistic meanings.
Okay.
It's about intuitively interpreting the dynamic interplay of these potent and multifaceted symbols within the specific context of a reading.
So as we draw to a close,
Yes.
it's clear that this deep dive has really only scratched the surface of the profound complexity of Crowley's Book of Thoth and his unique tarot.
It really is an extraordinary system,
It is.
overflowing with interconnected symbols and drawing from an incredibly wide spectrum of esoteric and philosophical traditions.
Indeed, it really invites us to contemplate
Hmm.
how these ancient symbols
Right.
and the philosophical frameworks they embody might offer a different and perhaps more profound lens through which to perceive our modern world and the very nature of reality itself.
Yes.
It certainly makes you ponder whether Crowley's ambitious intention of charting a course for a new eon through this extraordinary work still holds a certain resonance for individual understanding and exploration today.
A truly compelling thought to conclude with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Book of Thoth.
Until our next exploration into the occult archives.